So that was fun to have a bit of a class Kahoot, wasn't it? A bit of a team Kahoot. So next Thursday we're going to have the big grand finale with the parents and you guys, and we'll have the big Kahoot next Thursday night, which will be fun. So I really hope you guys get out and about a little bit more this weekend. The weather's going to be okay tomorrow, but not flash on Sunday. So but it'll be fun just to be able to breathe the fresh air for a bit. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying the BFG as much as I'm enjoying reading it to you, because it's always one of those fabulous books that you can't ever not read again, you know, and that's the beauty of the wonderful Roald Dahl, that he creates these wonderful books that people want to read again and again and again. So the next chapter, my dear Zoomers, is called The Giants. But if you're so nice and friendly, then why do you snatch me from my bed and run away with me? Because you saw me, the big friendly giant answered. If anyone is ever seeing a giant, he or she must be taken away hip switch. But why? Asked Sophie. Well, first of all, human beings is not really believing in giants, is they? Human beings is not thinking we exist. But I do, Sophie said. Ah, but that is only because you have seen me, cried the BFG. I cannot possibly allow anyone, even little girls, to be seeing me and staying at home. The first thing you would be doing, you would be scuttling around and yodeling the news that you were actually seeing a giant, and then a giant, great giant hunt, and a mighty giant look-see would be starting up all over the world with the human beings all rummaging for the great giant you saw and getting wildly excited. People would be coming rushing and brushing after me with goodness knows what, and they would be catching me and locking me into a cage and to be stared at. They would be putting me in a zoo or in the bunkum house with all those squiggling hippodimplings and crocodile wandlings. Sophie knew that what the giant said was true. If any person actually reported having seen a giant hunting the streets of a town at night, there would most certainly be a terrific hullabaloo across the world. I will bet you that you would have been splashing the news all over the wonky world, wouldn't you, if you hadn't wriggled yourself away? Well, yeah, I suppose I would have, Sophie said. And that would never do, said the BFG. So, what's going to happen to me now? Sophie asked. If you do go back, you will be telling the world, said the BFG. Most likely on the telly bunkin box and the radio squeaker. So you will just have to be staying here with me for the rest of your life. Oh, no, cried Sophie. Oh, yes, but I am warning you not to ever go whiffing about out of this cave without I is with you, or you will be coming to an unlucky mucky end. I is showing you now who is going to eat you up if they is ever catching you one tiny little glimp of you. They will eat you up. The big friendly giant picked Sophie up off the table and carried her to the cave entrance. He rolled the huge stone to one side and said, Peep out over there, little girl, and tell me what you was seeing. Sophie, sitting on the BFG's hand, peeped out of the cave. The sun was up now and shining fiery hot over the great yellow wasteland with its blue rocks and dead trees. Is you seeing them? The BFG asked. Sophie, squinting through the glare of the sun, saw several tremendous tall figures moving among the rocks about 500 yards away. 3 or 4 others were sitting quite motionless on the rocks themselves. This is giant country. Those is all giants, every one. It was a brain-boggling sight. The giants were all naked except for a short skirt around their waists, and their skins were burnt by the sun. But it was the sheer size of each one of them that boggled Sophie's brain most of all. They were simply colossal, far taller and wider than the big friendly giant upon whose hand she was now sitting, and oh, how ugly they were. Many of them had large bellies. All of them had long arms and big feet. They were too far away for their faces to be seen clearly, and perhaps that was actually a really good thing. What on earth are they doing? Sophie asked. Nothing. They is just moochalaling and footchalaling around and waiting for the night to come. Then they will all be galloping off to places where people is living to find their suppers. You mean some of them will go to Turkey? Sophie said. Bone-crunching giant will be galloping off to Turkey, of course. But the others will be whiffling off to all sorts of flung-away places like Wellington for the booty flavour and Panama for the hatty taste. Every giant is having his own favourite hunting ground. Do they ever go to England? Sophie asked. Often. They say that English is tasting ever so wonderfully codswallopy. I'm not quite sure what that means, Sophie said. Meaning is not important. I cannot be right all the time. Quite often I is left instead of right. And are all those beastly giants over there really going off again tonight to eat people? Sophie asked. All of them is guzzling human beings every night. All of them excepting me. That is why you will be coming to a very ucky-mucky end if any of them should ever be getting his grogglers upon you. You will be swallowed up like a piece of frumpkin pie, all in one dollop. But eating people is horrible, Sophie cried. It's frightful. Why doesn't someone stop them? And who, please, is going to be stopping them? Asked the BFG. Well, couldn't you? Never in a pig's whistle, cried the BFG. All those man-eating giants is enormous and very fierce. They is all at least 2 times my wideness and double my royal highness. Are they really twice as high as you? Cried Sophie. Easily that. You is seeing them in a distance, but just wait till you get up close. Those giants are all at least 50 feet tall with huge muscles and cockles alive, oh. I is the titchy one. I is the runt. 24 feet is puddle nuts in giant country. You mustn't feel bad about it. I think you're just great. Why, even your toes must be as big as sausages. Bigger. They're as big as bumplehammers. How many giants are there out there? Sophie asked. 9 altogether, answered the BFG. Help, that means that somewhere in the world every night 9 wretched people get carried away and eaten alive. More! It is all depending, you see, on how big the human beans is. Japanese beans is very small, so a giant will need to gobble up about 6 Japaneses before he is feeling full up. Others like Norway people and the Yankee Doodles is ever so much bigger, and usually 2 or 3 of those makes a good tuck-in. But do these disgusting giants go to every single country in the world? Sophie asked. All countries except Greece is getting visited sometime or another. The country which a giant visits is depending on how he is feeling. If it is very warm weather and the giant is feeling as hot as a sizzle pan, he will probably go galloping far up to the Frisbee North to get himself an Esquimau or 2 to cool him down. And a nice fat Esquimau to a giant is like a lovely ice cream lolly to you. Oh, I'll have to take your word for that, Sophie said. And then again, if it is a frosty night and the giant is fridging with cold, he will probably point his nose towards the sweltering hotlands to guzzle a few Hottentots to warm him up. Oh, how perfectly horrible, Sophie said. Nothing hots a cold giant up like a Hottentot, the BFG said. And if you were to put me down on the ground and I was to walk out amongst them now, would they really eat me up? Sophie asked. Like a whiz-with whittle, cried the BFG. And what is more, you is so small they wouldn't even have to chew you. The first one to be seeing you would pick you up in his fingers and down you'd go like a drop of drain water. Oh, I don't think I like this. Let's go back inside. I really hate even watching them. Back in the cave, the friendly giant sat Sophie down once again on the enormous table. Is you quite snugly there in your nightie? He asked. You isn't frigidly cold? Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you, Sophie said. I cannot help thinking about your poor mummy and daddy. By now they must be jipping and scumping all over the house, shouting, Hello, hello, where is Sophie gone? Well, actually, I don't have a mummy or a daddy. They both died when I was a baby. Oh, you poor little scrumplet. Is you not missing them very badly? No, not really, because I never knew them. You was making me sad. the BFG said, rubbing his eyes. Oh, don't be sad. No one is going to be worrying too much about me. That place you took me from was the village orphanage. We are all orphans in there. You as an orphan? Yes. How many is there in there? Well, there's 10 of us and we're all little girls. Was you happy there? The BFG asked. I hated it. The woman who ran it was called Mrs. Clonkers, and if she caught you breaking any of the rules, like getting out of bed at night or not folding up your clothes, you got punished. How was you getting punished? Well, she used to lock us in the dark cellar for a day and a night without anything to eat or drink. That rotten old rot scaper, cried the BFG. It was horrid. We used to dread it. There were rats down there and we could hear them creeping about. That filthy old fizzwiggler, shouted the BFG. That is the horridest thing I is hearing for years. You is making me sadder than ever. All at once a huge tear that would have filled a bucket rolled down one of the BFG's cheeks and fell with a splash on the floor, and it made quite a puddle. Sophie watched with astonishment. What a strange and moody creature this is, she thought. One moment he is telling me my head is full of squashed flies, and the next moment his heart is melting for me because Mrs. Clonkers locks us up in the cellar. The one thing that worries me is having to stay in this dreadful place for the rest of my life. The orphanage was pretty awful, but I wouldn't have been there forever, would I? All my fault. I is the one who kid-snatched you. Yet another enormous tear welled from his eye and splashed to the floor. Now I come to think of it, I won't actually be here all that long, Sophie said. I is afraid you will, the BFG said. No, I won't. Those brutes out there are bound to catch me sooner or later and have me for their dinner. I is never letting that happen, the BFG said. For a few moments the cave was silent. Then Sophie said, May I ask you a question? The BFG wiped the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand and gave Sophie a long, thoughtful stare. Shoot away, he said. Would you please tell me what you were doing in our village last night? Why were you poking that long trumpet thing into the Gucci's children's bedroom and then blowing through it? Aha! Cried the BFG, sitting up suddenly in his chair. Now we is getting nosier and parkier. And that suitcase you were carrying, Sophie said, what on earth was that all about? The BFG stared suspiciously at the small girl sitting cross-legged on the table. You asking me to tell you whoopsie big secrets that nobody is ever hearing before? Well, I won't tell a soul because there's no one to tell. I swear it. How could I anyway? Because I'm actually stuck here for the rest of my life. You could be telling the other giants. No, I couldn't. You told me they would eat me up the moment they saw me. And so they would. You as a human being, and human beings is like straw bunkles and cream to those giants. Well, if they're going to eat me the moment they see me, then I wouldn't have time to tell them anything, would I? Sophie said. You wouldn't, said the BFG. Then why did you say I might? Because it is brimful of buzzbangers, the BFG said. If you listen to everything I am saying, you will be getting earache. Oh, please tell me what you were doing in our village, Sophie said. I promise you can trust me. And so, my dear friends, that is the end of our time. So, great week, guys. One more week and we've got a fun week planned for you guys. And so something that we can really end our term 3 off with a bang. So have a fabulous weekend. Be kind to each other. Don't get too grumpy with your mummies and daddies. Give them a really, really big hug from all the teachers and me to say a big thank you for being the bestest seesaw teachers that have ever existed. All right, lovely people, sleep tight. Mwah.